The vast emptiness of space stretched endlessly, a dark ocean dotted with faint stars. The alien fleet glided silently through the void, their engines humming like a distant storm. For weeks they had been hunting raiders, looking for any vessel, daring enough to cross their territory. Tonight felt different. The scanners picked up a lone ship drifting near an abandoned asteroid field. "Commander." "We have a target," said Lieutenant Zirk, his thin fingers dancing over the controls. "Small vessel, unknown origin, appears heavily damaged. No active defenses detected." Commander Rithon leaned forward in his chair, his long-scaled face curling into a grin. "Finally, some sport," he said. His voice carried arrogance. "A predator believing the hunt already won. Bring us closer. Prepare a boarding team." Moving toward the mysterious vessel. At first glance, it looked harmless. A broken hull, flickering lights, and no sign of life. Rithon imagined an easy capture, another trophy for his record. Yet a strange silence clung to the air. No distress signals, no hails. Just nothing. "Strange," muttered Zirk, adjusting the scanners. "The ship isn't transmitting any identification codes. It's like it's dead." Rithon chuckled. "What? Dead or alive? It won't matter. We'll take what we need and scrap the rest." He turned to his crew. "Ready the tractor beam? This'll be quick." The fleet's main vessel extended a beam of pale light, pulling the damaged ship closer. As it drifted toward them, a low, static-filled sound crackled across the comms. Everyone froze. The sound was faint, broken, like a ghost trying to speak. "Is that a distress signal?" asked Zirk, his voice shaking slightly. "Enhance it," Rithon ordered. The sound grew clearer, forming words in an old galactic language, one long forgotten by most civilizations. The translator kicked in, converting the message into something. Every alien on the bridge understood. "This is a human vessel requesting assistance." The entire bridge went silent. Every officer stared at one another, disbelief painted on their faces. "Human?" Someone whispered. The word felt heavy, like a curse. No one dared to repeat it. Stories had been told for centuries, warnings passed down through generations about the one species no fleet wanted to encounter. Humans were rare in this part of the galaxy, but every tale about them ended in blood and fire. They were not conquerors, but survivors, and nothing survived their wrath. Rithon's grin vanished. His scales paled as he stared at the drifting ship now locked in their tractor beam. His heart pounded in his chest, his claws gripping the command chair. "Impossible," he muttered, trying to convince himself it was just a malfunction. It must be a trick. Humans are extinct. They haven't been seen in this sector for hundreds of cycles. But the message repeated, clearer this time, carrying a tone that made every alien's stomach turn cold. "This is a human vessel requesting assistance." Zirk's voice trembled. "Commander, should we release it?" Rithon didn't answer. Mind replayed every war story he had ever heard about humans. Fleets vanishing overnight, empires burned to ash. A single human ship wiping out entire armadas. He said humans never surrendered. They fought like demons, turning every battle into a nightmare for those who dared to face them. Finally, he spoke, his voice low, heavy with dread. "If it's human," he swallowed hard, his claws shaking on the armrest. "We're already dead." No one moved. The damaged vessel floated just outside their viewport, silent except for that haunting transmission. Time in his life, Commander Rithon felt true fear not of death, but of what might awaken inside that human ship. The alien fleet hung motionless in the vast darkness of space, every ship holding its breath as if the void itself demanded silence. The mysterious vessel drifted lifelessly in the tractor beam, but that one signal, the faint, broken transmission, claiming it was human, had changed everything. On the command bridge, no one dared to speak. The steady hum of the ship's engines sounded louder than usual, an ominous reminder of how close they were to the thing every alien feared. Commander Rithon's eyes stayed fixed on the vessel through the wide viewport. It looked dead, a shattered husk barely holding itself together. But legend said appearances never saved anyone from humanity's wrath. Lieutenant Zirk's hands trembled over the console. Commander, he whispered, his voice hesitant. What are your orders? Rythan's jaw tightened. The usual confidence in his tone was gone. Hold position, no one fires, no one moves. His voice cracked slightly, betraying the fear rising in his chest. Around the bridge, his officers exchanged uneasy glances. Soldiers who had fought wars, burned planets, and conquered countless systems now stood paralyzed by a name, by a rumor that had crossed time and galaxies, humanity. A young ensign finally broke the silence. Sir, maybe it's a trick. Pirates sometimes fake old signals to scare patrol fleets. Rythan turned sharply, his eyes glowing with cold fury. No pirate would dare invoke that name, he growled. Not if they wanted to live. His claws tapped against the armrest of his command chair, a nervous habit he hadn't shown in decades. The ensign swallowed hard and looked away. Zerk hesitated before asking, should we investigate further? Rythan didn't answer right away. His mind drifted back to stories told to him when he was a cadet. Tales of the old wars when humanity first reached the stars. The galaxy had been a wild, lawless frontier then, full of powerful empires that thought themselves untouchable, till humans came. They didn't conquer planets for power or glory. They fought because someone threatened them in when they did. They turned the battlefield into a graveyard. They used tactics no one had seen before, relentless, terrifying, willing to destroy themselves just to drag their enemies down with them. The stories claimed entire fleets vanished in the blink of an eye when a human declared war. And now, one of their vessels sat just a few hundred meters away from him, damaged, silent, watching. Commander, said Officer Creel, the communications expert, her voice quiet but urgent. The message. It's repeating again, slightly clearer this time. A cold shiver ran down every spine on the bridge as the static filled. Voice echoed through the speakers. This is a human vessel, requesting assistance. The words lingered in the air, heavy and sharp like a blade. One of the junior officers whispered, barely loud enough to be heard, humans were supposed to be gone. Wiped out long ago? No, Rythan replied darkly, never taking his eyes off the ship. Humans don't die easily. That's what makes them monsters. A hush fell again. The crew seemed to shrink in their seats as though saying too much would draw the humans' attention. The silence was broken by the harsh hiss of the ship's intercom. Commander, this is Patrol Ship 3. A voice crackled from one of the escort vessels. We're reading faint life signs on the target, humanoid pattern, but the energy readings are unstable, almost unnatural. Rythan clenched his fists. Something about that description made his skin crawl. Should we board and capture? It, sir. The patrol captain asked, though even through the coms, fear leaked into his tone. The commander's gut screamed no. He wanted to turn his ship around, order the fleet to jump to hyperspace and forget this cursed encounter ever happened. But another voice in his head, the voice of his superiors, reminded him that retreat would mean disgrace. Cowardice was punishable by death in their empire. He glanced at his crew. Their eyes begged him to leave, yet none spoke it aloud. Finally, Rythan gave the order. No boarding. Maintain distance. Scan for more human vessels. If there's one, there may be others. Zerk's face turned ashen. Commander, there are more humans. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Everyone knew what it meant. A second war. One they couldn't win. A quiet beeping interrupted the tense silence. Creel leaned over her console, her eyes wide. Sir, long-range sensors are detecting. Something what? Don barked. The fear in his gut twisting tighter. Multiple warp signatures at extreme range. Unknown origin. Too far to identify, but the energy pattern is similar to this vessel's engine type. Rythan felt the blood drain from his face. The thought slammed into him like a meteor. More human ships could be on their way. This drifting vessel might only be the beginning, a bait or a survivor from a far greater threat. On another channel, whispers began to spread among the fleet. Crew members from other ships contacted the flagship, their voices low, desperate. Is it true? One asked. Is it really human? My grandfather fought them once, said another. He lost an arm. Said they fight like they were already dead. I heard a single human ship destroyed an entire battle moon in one strike, someone else muttered. The rumors grew with every passing minute, feeding the terror that wrapped around every soldier like a vice. These were warriors bred for conquest. Killers without remorse, yet now they looked over their shoulders as though death itself had found them. Zerk leaned closer to Rithon and whispered so only the commander could hear. "Sir, we should leave. Before they arrive. Before it's too late." Rithon's hands tightened on his chair. Imagine turning the fleet around, racing into the safety of deep space. But he also imagined the Emperor's wrath for abandoning a mission. Before he could respond, the comms crackled again, this time with a new message. A voice far clearer, far colder than before. "You shouldn't have come." The bridge froze. Every officer stared at the speakers as the words echoed through the room, sending chills down their spines. This was no distress signal.
No, this was a
"Warning, who said that?" Creel whispered, her eyes darting across her controls. "I can't trace the source." The human vessel floated silently outside the viewport, but now it didn't seem so lifeless anymore. A faint light flickered behind one of the broken windows. A shadow moved past it, slow and deliberate, as if something inside was watching them. Rithon swallowed hard. His voice was low when he finally spoke. "Cut the tractor beam." Zerk hesitated.
Aye, sir.
"I said cut it." Rithon barked. The beam disengaged, and the alien flagship slowly drifted back, putting distance between itself and the human vessel. Yet somehow, it didn't feel far enough. The ship's very presence was suffocating, as though the void around it was waiting. For blood to spill, Rithon turned to his crew, his eyes dark with a fear he couldn't hide anymore. "Signal the fleet. Prepare for emergency jump. If more of them come, this battle is already lost." And for the first time in his long career as a war commander, Rithon truly believed it, because somewhere, deep in his bones, he knew one thing. The legends got right. Humans never let their enemies walk away unscarred. The alien fleet lingered in uneasy silence, every ship keeping a cautious distance from the drifting human vessel. The commander's order to cut the tractor beam had been obeyed immediately, but the fear on every face remained, even separated. By kilometers of empty space, the vessel felt alive, as if it could sense their fear, inside the alien flagship's bridge. Commander Rithon paced slowly, his claws clicking on the metal floor. Every legend about humans clawed at the back of his mind, whispering of death and destruction. Lieutenant Zerk's voice trembled as he spoke. "Commander, the crew is growing restless. They want answers." Rithon turned sharply, his eyes burning. With anger not at Zerk, but at the situation. "Tell them there are no answers, not yet." Before another word could be said, a sudden, harsh tone blared through the comms. "Patrol Ship 3 was signaling urgently." Rithon opened the channel, "Commander." The patrol captain's voice came through, full of fear. "We're detecting movement inside the vessel. Multiple life signs, but they're wrong. They don't match any known species patterns." "Except what?" Rithon demanded. There was a pause. "Except human." The bridge went deathly silent again. Rithon's stomach knotted painfully. He knew leaving this vessel floating here was risky, but he also knew his superiors would not accept fear as an excuse to retreat. They would demand proof, information, something to justify leaving this encounter alive. He took a deep breath. "Send in a boarding team," he said, his voice heavy like lead. Zerk's eyes widened in disbelief. "Sir, with respect, that's suicide." "I know," Rithon said quietly, his voice grim. "But someone has to find out what's in there." Moments later, a small squad of 6 heavily armed soldiers prepared in the docking bay. Their armor was thick, weapons charged to maximum power. Even so, fear radiated from them. Everyone knew. The old stories? Armor wouldn't save you from a human? The boarding pod detached from the alien flagship and drifted toward the derelict human vessel. The comm channel stayed open, the entire fleet listening in. "This is boarding team 1, squad leader said, his voice steady, only because he forced it to be. We're approaching the hull. Scans show structural weakness, but safe entry. Point detected. With a hiss of hydraulics, the pod latched onto an airlock. The soldiers cut through the damaged door, stepping into darkness. The sound of their boots echoed in the dead silence of the corridor. Lights on, the leader ordered. Beams of white light sliced through the blackness, revealing walls scorched by fire and deep claw marks, as if some creature had torn through the metal with raw strength. The air was stale, cold, and heavy with the scent of burnt electronics. Looks like a war zone. One soldier muttered. No bodies. Another whispered. Where are the crew? The leader tried to ignore the chill crawling down his spine. Stay sharp. Anything moves? You fire. They moved deeper into the ship. Broken panels sparked faintly. A few doors hung off their hinges. And yet, despite the destruction, there was no sign of blood. No sign of anyone at all. A sudden thump echoed from somewhere ahead. Everyone froze. Weapons raised. Did you hear that? Soldier whispered, his voice tight with panic. Yes, the leader said slowly. Stay close. They rounded a corner and found a shattered console flickering weakly. A faint holographic screen displayed an old human symbol, a flag many in the galaxy hadn't seen for centuries. One soldier swallowed hard. So it's true. This is human tech. Before anyone could respond, a faint sound came from the intercom. Above them, a whispering voice, barely audible, yet every word clear as glass. Leave or die. The soldiers froze, their hearts pounding. Commander, did you hear that? The squad leader called through. Comes Rython's voice came through immediately. We heard, stay calm, identify the source of that message. The leader glanced around nervously. It's coming from everywhere. We can't pinpoint it. A loud clang came from behind them, metal scraping against metal. The team spun around, weapons ready, but the corridor was empty. I don't like this, a soldier muttered. This ship's haunted. There's no such thing as ghosts, the leader said, though his voice betrayed doubt. Move forward. They reached what looked like the main control room. The door was twisted, as though something had ripped it open. Inside, consoles were smashed, screens shattered, chairs overturned. But on the far side of the room stood something that made every soldier's breath catch. A figure, humanoid, standing perfectly still in the shadows. Identify yourself. The leader shouted, his weapon aimed at the shape. The figure didn't move, didn't speak. Step forward. The leader barked again. Now slowly the figure shifted. A faint light revealed a human in a torn spacesuit, helmet cracked, face hidden. They stood unnaturally still, head tilted at an odd angle, as if studying the aliens. Sir, one of the soldiers whispered, I thought humans were extinct. The human finally spoke, their voice low and chilling. Extinct? No, the tone shifted, sharper, more threatening. But you will be. Before the soldiers could react, every light in the ship flickered violently, plunging them into darkness. Screams erupted over the coms. Blaster fire lit. The hallway in bursts of red. Something's moving. It's fast. It's behind US No. It's everywhere. Static and gunfire filled the channel as the boarding team's signals blinked erratically on the fleet's monitors. Rython gripped the arms of his command chair, fear crawling up his spine. Team 1, report. IE barked into the coms. More. Static. Then, the squad leader's panicked voice broke through. It's not just one. There are more of them. So many humans. A horrible sound echoed over the channel. Metal tearing, screams, and then silence. One by one, the life signs of the boarding team faded to nothing. The coms cut off. Leaving only dead air, the entire bridge of the flagship sat frozen. Every officer staring wide-eyed at the console, showing the vanished signals. Nobody spoke. Nobody breathed. Rython's claws dug into the armrests, his voice barely above a whisper. Retrieve the pod. No life signs remain, Zerk said quietly, his voice shaking. Retrieve it anyway, Rython said, his tone hollow. We need proof of what we just faced, before they come for us next. As the retrieval drone left the flagship, everyone knew the truth they didn't dare say aloud. The ghost ship was not dead, it was awake, and the humans aboard it were not survivors. They were hunters. The alien flagship floated in tense silence, its crew haunted by the screams that had echoed through the comms minutes earlier. 6 elite soldiers had entered the human vessel. None had returned. The retrieval drone brought back only a scorched, empty boarding pod. Not even armor fragments were left inside. It was as if the humans had erased them from existence. On the bridge, every officer kept their eyes on their consoles, too afraid to look at Commander Rithon. The fear in the room was thick, suffocating, almost alive. The human ship still drifted. Silently outside the viewport, lifeless, yet full of unseen horrors. Lieutenant Zirk broke the silence, his voice shaking. "Commander, permission to speak freely?" Rithon didn't look up from the tactical screen he was gripping too tightly. "Granted," he said, though his tone was cold and heavy. "We need to leave right now. This is not a fight we can win." Several other officers nodded quickly, desperate for an order to retreat. Rithon finally looked up, his eyes tired but stern. "And what should I tell the High Council when they ask why I fled a single ship?" Zirk hesitated. "Tell them the truth," he said. "Tell them it was human." The bridge went silent again. That word still carried weight. Too many younger soldiers, humans were just stories used to scare cadets into obedience. To the veterans, the word was a memory once soaked in blood and fire. Before Rithon could answer, a loud alert blared across the ship. The communications officer, Creel, frantically tapped at her console. "Incoming transmission." "It's being broadcast to the entire fleet." A hollow, distorted human voice filled every comm channel, every speaker across all ships. "You came hunting," the voice said slowly, as if savoring each word. "Now you are the prey." The bridge crew froze, staring at one another with wide, terrified eyes. Even the hardened commander felt his stomach knot tighter. "Trace that signal," Rithon barked, though his own voice quivered. Creel shook her head, panic in her eyes. "It's everywhere, Commander. I can't block it. It's like the human is inside our system." Almost immediately after the broadcast ended, reports started pouring in from other ships in the fleet. Voices shouted over comms, full of fear and confusion. "This is Patrol Ship 5. Something just boarded us. No airlocks breach just appeared inside. Patrol Ship 9 under attack. Unknown entities moving through the corridors too fast to track. Engineering decks losing power. Lights flickering, sensors failing, we can't." The comm channels erupted in chaos. Dozens of ships screaming for help all at once. Every message ended in static, followed by silence. Zirk turned to Rithon, his face pale. "Sir, they're spreading." Rithon's claws dug into the armrest of his chair. "Order all ships to seal every compartment. Maximum security protocols. Full battle readiness." But even as the orders went out, fear grew like wildfire. The fleet had started this mission confident, arrogant, certain of their power. Now they were fractured, panicked, breaking apart from within. Another alert flashed on the bridge. A drone camera feed from one of the patrol ships appeared on the main screen. The image was dark and shaky, the sound of gunfire and terrified. Alien screams in the background. A soldier's voice shouted, "They're everywhere. They don't die. They don't stop." Then the feed abruptly cut to black. Rythan's scales felt ice cold. This wasn't war. This was slaughter. Commander Creel whispered, her voice cracking. "We can't win. If this continues, the entire fleet will be wiped out." Rythan's mind raced. He thought of his career, of the High Council's punishment for retreating, but the fear in his chest was stronger than his fear of his leaders. He had seen many battles, lost friends and soldiers. Yet nothing had ever made him feel helpless like this. His voice was low when he finally spoke. "Signal every ship. Prepare for emergency hyperspace jump. We're leaving." The crew exhaled in quiet relief. For a brief moment it felt like hope. But before they could initiate the jump, every console on the bridge flickered and went black. The engines roared, then died, leaving only silence. The emergency lights bathed the room in a dim red glow. "What happened?" Rithon shouted. Creel's trembling hands flew over her controls. I don't know. It's like something shut down the entire fleet's systems at once. "They're jamming us," Zerk whispered. "Or worse, they're controlling us." A new transmission filled the bridge speakers. This time, the voice was calm, almost mocking. "You cannot run," the human said. "You hunted us. You will learn why the galaxy fears our name." The words echoed like a death sentence. Rithon slammed his fist on the console, desperate and furious. "Weapons. I don't care how damaged they are, arm them. Fire everything at that ship." "Commander?" Zerk said, scrambling to obey. The flagship's heavy cannons powered up, aiming directly at the drifting human vessel. Across the fleet, dozens of ships did the same, forming a barrage that could have shattered a planet. "Fire," Rithon roared. Beams of plasma and volleys of missiles lit up the void, striking the human vessel head-on. Explosions rippled across its surface, tearing chunks of metal apart. The alien bridge crew watched in silence, holding on to the hope that maybe, just maybe, they had ended this nightmare. Then, the debris stopped spinning, slowly, impossibly. The shattered pieces of the human vessel pulled back together, metal reshaping. Flames extinguishing, lights flaring to life brighter than before. Within seconds, the ship looked whole again, floating silently as if nothing had touched it. Zerk's voice was barely a whisper. "That's not possible," it's the humans. Voice returned, now colder than ever. "We gave you a chance to leave." The fleet's communications channels erupted again. It's not with reports of battle, but with sheer terror. They're inside the command decks. Doors won't lock. Something's overriding the controls. "We're losing crew one by one," they just vanished. Ships began firing wildly into the darkness, some turning their weapons on each other in blind panic. Formation broke apart. Fear had completely consumed them. Rithon gripped his chair, his voice trembling but firm. "All remaining ships, regroup on my position." But no one answered. One by one, their signals disappeared, either destroyed or taken by whatever hunted them. Creel looked at him, her eyes wide with dread. "Commander, what do we do?" Rithon stared at the human vessel glowing in the distance, untouched, invincible. The legends had been true, every word of them. His voice was barely a whisper, but everyone on the bridge heard it. "We don't fight humans. We survive them. If we're lucky." And deep in the void, multiple warp signatures flickered at the edge of their sensors. More ships were arriving, and they weren't alien. The alien flagship floated in dead silence. The once mighty fleet was now a broken, scattered force, its proud soldiers reduced to whispers of fear. Commander Rithon stood on the bridge, staring at the glowing vessel in the distance. It hadn't moved. It didn't need to. The humans had already won without firing a single shot. Every officer on the bridge avoided his gaze, too frightened to speak. Only the faint hum of emergency power filled the air, a grim reminder that their systems were still under someone else's control. Lieutenant Zerk finally spoke. His voice low, careful, as if afraid the human ship could hear. "Commander, we're detecting more warp signatures on the edge of the system. Unknown class, unknown number, energy pattern, similar to the human vessel." No one needed confirmation. They all knew what it meant. More humans were coming. Rithon felt his heart sink. His claws tightened on the edge of the console until the metal bent under his grip. He had fought 100 battles, destroyed entire colonies, crushed rebellions. Yet this single word human had him on the edge of panic. The bridge crew stayed silent until Creel, the communications officer, broke it. "Sir," she whispered, "the crew is unstable. Some are refusing orders. There are rumors spreading fast." "What rumors?" Rithon asked sharply, though his voice betrayed exhaustion. "That this fleet will not return," Creel said. "That humans are the last enemy any species faces." The commander closed his eyes. He remembered the stories told to him when he was young, long before he earned his rank. Stories he had dismissed as war myths, propaganda meant to frighten recruits. But now they came back to him with terrifying clarity. Decades ago, long before Rithan's time, the galaxy had been a battlefield. Dozens of great empires ruled. Their sectors through fear and firepower. None believed in diplomacy. Conquest was the law. Then the humans appeared. A small, fragile species with short lifespans and primitive ships. Many thought them weak. Many attacked them. And every single one of those empires had vanished. The legends said humans were different from all others. They had no claws, no scales, no armor. They bled easily. They broke easily. And yet they never stopped fighting. They didn't fight for glory, for planets, or resources. They fought because they had no choice but to survive. One empire had. Once mocked humanity as the soft race. Within a century, that empire no longer existed. It wasn't just their armies that died. Their homeworlds were burned, their names erased from galactic history. It was said that a single human fleet once took on 3 entire armadas and won not through power, but through fear and cunning. It would set traps that turned space itself into a weapon. They used desperation like a blade, willing to destroy themselves just to ensure their enemy didn't win. The galaxy learned one truth. You could fight anyone and have a chance to win. But if you fought humans, you didn't fight a war, you fought extinction. Zerk's voice pulled Rithan back to the present. Commander! If those incoming signatures are human reinforcements, we won't survive this. We should abandon the sector before they arrive. Rithan wanted to say yes. Every instinct screamed at him to run, to leave everything behind. But the thought of returning to his empire empty-handed, branded a coward, weighed heavily on him. Commander. Creel's voice was soft, almost pleading. With respect, honor won't matter if we're dead. None of us will return if we stay. Rithan said nothing, his mind torn between pride and survival. His thoughts were interrupted by a new transmission. The speakers crackled, and a calm, human voice spoke across all channels. You shouldn't have come, it said. Everyone on the bridge froze. Rithan forced himself to answer, his voice trembling despite his efforts to sound strong. This is Commander Rithan of the Zarkith fleet. We mean no harm. We were investigating a distress signal. Silence followed, stretching long enough to make the crew think the humans wouldn't reply. Then, the voice returned, colder this time. You came with weapons ready. You came to take what wasn't yours. That was your first mistake. Zerk whispered under his breath. There won't be a second. Another sensor alert interrupted. The transmission. Creel's eyes widened in terror as she read the data. Multiple human ships just entered the system. I count 30. No, 40 signatures. Approaching fast. The bridge filled with a quiet, collective dread. The mysterious ship had been terrifying enough. Now, a fleet of them was arriving. Rithan stood still, his mind racing. He had only heard of human fleets and stories, and those stories always ended with annihilation. No one had ever claimed victory against them. Some battles lasted minutes, others weeks. The result was the same. Humanity left nothing standing. He remembered an old phrase his mentor had once told him. A line every cadet learned but few believed. Humans don't start wars. But if you start one with them, they will finish it, no matter the cost. The bridge lights flickered. The ship's systems shuddered as an unknown force brushed over their network. Creel gasped. Commander, they're inside our systems again. Every firewall is falling like paper. Zerk's voice cracked. They're not just coming for us. They're already here. On the viewport, the drifting human vessel slowly turned, its front facing the alien flagship. Its lights glowed brighter, almost like an eye-opening. Then, in the distant void, dozens of other human ships warped into real space. Surrounding the remnants of the alien fleet like predators circling prey, the channel opened once more. The human voice, calm and absolute. You came to hunt, it said. Now you face extinction. Every alien on the bridge felt a primal, bone-deep fear at those words. This was not a negotiation, not a standoff. It was judgment. Rythan's claws shook on the command chair. Pride was useless now. There was no glory in dying here. Only survival mattered. "Signal all ships," he said hoarsely. "Drop weapons. Prepare to surrender." No one questioned him. Not this time. As his officers scrambled to obey, Rithon glanced out at the human fleet surrounding them, their silhouettes dark and silent against the starlight. Legends were no longer stories. They were real. They were here. The galaxy's oldest nightmare had just awakened. The alien fleet hung frozen in space, surrounded by human ships that had appeared like ghosts from the void. Dozens of dark silhouettes floated silently, their lights cold and menacing. Not a single weapon was raised, yet the entire alien armada felt the weight of death pressing down on them. On the flagship's bridge, Commander Rithon forced himself to stay calm, though his heart pounded in terror. His claws dug into the command chair as he barked out his next order. "Signal all ships. Lower shields. Power down weapons. Transmit universal surrender code." "Yes, Commander," Zerk replied quickly, fingers flying over his console. His voice shook as he added, "Sir, what if they don't accept?" Rithon glanced at the growing formation of human vessels. They didn't move closer, didn't fire, didn't reply. They just waited, silent and terrifying. "They don't need to accept," Rithon said quietly. "They've already won." The surrender code was sent out. Every ship in the alien fleet powered down its weapons, engines dimmed. Shields collapsed. Yet no human transmission came in response. The silence was unbearable. "Are they receiving it?" Creel asked, her voice trembling. Zerk checked the signals. "Yes, but they're not answering." Seconds dragged into minutes. The alien crews whispered among themselves, fear growing like a living thing. Finally, a sudden alarm blared across the bridge. One of the alien patrol ships, Ship 7, was gone. "What happened?" Stan demanded. Zerk stared at his console, confused and terrified. I don't know. It just vanished from sensors. No explosion. No debris. One moment it was there, the next it wasn't. Creel's hand shook as she listened to the comms. "Sir." Before they went dark, they screamed something. Just one word. Rithon turned sharply. "What word?" She swallowed hard. "Human." The bridge crew froze. Rithon felt the blood drain from his face. He spun to Zerk. "Scan the area again." "I am, sir." Zerk's voice rose in panic. No weapons fire, no warp trails, no movement. It's like the ship was erased from existence. Another alert screamed. Ship 12 disappeared next, its distress signal cutting off mid-scream. "They're taking us one by one," Zerk whispered. Creel's eyes darted to the viewport, but they're not firing. "I don't see any attacks," and that was what made it worse. The human fleet hadn't moved. They floated silently in the void, far out of firing range. Whatever was destroying the alien ships wasn't visible. Rithon gritted his teeth. "Helm, prepare evasive maneuvers. Keep us moving. Don't let us be an easy target." But before the order could be carried out, the lights flickered on the bridge. Every console went dark for a second, then came back online with strange symbols running across them. Creel gasped. "Commander, someone is inside our systems again. They're overriding control." "Cut the link," Rithon barked. "I can't," she cried. "They're everywhere. It's like they own this ship now." The speakers came alive with a calm, human voice. It was the same tone they had heard before, steady and terrifying. "Surrender means nothing," the voice said. "You came to hunt, came to kill. We only return what you brought." Rithon stepped forward, trying to project strength he didn't feel. "This is a misunderstanding," he said, his voice loud. "We thought your ship was abandoned. We never meant to start a war." The human voice didn't change tone. "You brought war long ago. Our kind remembers." The bridge crew glanced nervously at each other. There had been rumors that humans carried grudges across centuries, that they never forgave, never forgot. Many had laughed at those rumors. No one was laughing now. Another alert blared. Ship 14 disappeared. Then Ship 9. Both gone without a trace. No explosion, no wreckage, just silence. The alien fleet was being eaten alive by something they couldn't see. Panic spread through the comm channels. "Where are they?" "I can't track them. Boarders on my ship, we can't stop them. They just walk through our bulkheads there inside the walls." Zerk's hands trembled over his console. Sir, we can't survive this. We can't even fight back. Rithon clenched his jaw, rage and terror boiling together. Helm, prepare a blind hyperspace jump. I don't care where, just get us out of this sector. But before the command could be executed, the ship shuddered violently. The lights dimmed to red. Alarms screamed. Creel's voice cracked with fear. Something just boarded us. How? Rithon barked. Shields are down, but we saw nothing approach. I don't know, Creel said, panic rising. They're just here. The sound of metal scraping echoed through the corridors of the flagship. A slow, deliberate noise that made every soldier freeze in terror. A young ensign whimpered. It's like they're already inside our minds. Static filled the speakers, followed by a whisper so quiet it made every alien's skin crawl. Run, if you can, then a deafening alarm. Ship 3 exploded in the distance, the first real explosion of the encounter. The fleet watched helplessly as its wreckage spun through space. But even in destruction, no escape pods launched. It was as if every soul aboard had vanished before the blast. Rython's breathing was heavy, his mind screaming for escape, for survival. But every option slipped through his claws. He looked out the viewport at the human fleet. They had not fired a single shot. They had not moved an inch. Yet his fleet was dying all around him. This wasn't war. This was hunting. And the humans were predators. No prey could ever hope to escape. For the first time in his long military career, Commander Rithon said the words he had sworn he never would. All ships. Scatter. Run. Every vessel for itself. But deep in his heart, he knew the truth. It wouldn't matter. No one escapes when humans decide the hunt has begun. And somewhere in the void, far beyond their sensors, a new transmission. Whispered across the stars, you thought extinction was a story? Tonight, you learn it's a promise. The alien fleet was no more. What remained were scattered ships fleeing in panic through the blackness of space. Commander Rithon's flagship floated alone now, surrounded by eerie silence and the ever-watchful human fleet. The once proud commander sat heavily in his chair, exhaustion weighing down his limbs. His eyes, sharp and cold once, now held the dark shadow of defeat. His claws tapped nervously on the armrest as the final warning signals blared from the ship's sensors. Sir, Lieutenant Zerk's voice broke the silence. We are the last ship in the system. All others have disappeared or been destroyed. Rython's jaw tightened. Then we make our last stand. The bridge crew worked quickly to prepare the ship's limited defenses. The weapons were damaged and the shields weak, but Rithon refused to surrender completely. If we die fighting. The silence of space was shattered by a sharp ping. A new signal appeared on their sensors closer than before. Fleet was moving in, not to attack outright, but to surround and close off every escape. The communications officer, Creel, stared at her console with wide eyes. They're here, Commander. I'm receiving a boarding signal. Something. Alive is moving toward us. Prepare the crew, Rithon ordered. Everyone to battle stations. A tense calm settled over the ship as soldiers readied themselves. They loaded weapons, sealed bulkheads, and took up defensive positions. The air was thick with fear, but also grim determination. Suddenly, the hull shuddered violently. The human boarding pod had docked silently, without warning. No warning alarms, no sounds of impact, just the cold reality of an enemy aboard. Rithon stood, claws clenched tightly. This ends now. The lights dimmed as power shifted to emergency mode. The corridors outside the bridge flickered with red light. Teams, move out, Rithon commanded. The boarding parties spread through the ship, weapons drawn, senses sharp. The human invaders were nowhere to be seen. No footsteps echoed. No sounds betrayed their presence. It was as if the shadows themselves moved with deadly purpose. Lieutenant Zerk's voice crackled over the comm. Sir, we have movement near the engine room. No bodies shifting, but no bodies visible. Use scanners, Rithon ordered. The scanners showed heat signatures, dozens of them, but they flickered on and off. Too fast to track properly. Impossible, muttered Creel. They're like ghosts. Suddenly, a harsh voice filled the combs, cold and clear. You fought well, but it ends here. Rithon's blood ran cold. Show yourself. The shadows in the corridor shifted, and from the darkness stepped a single human figure. He was tall and broad, wearing battered armor scarred from battles long past. His eyes glowed faintly in the dim light eyes that held centuries of war and survival. The human raised a hand, and the ship's lights flickered again. Rithon stood firm, but inside his heart hammered. He had heard the stories, but facing a human survivor was something else entirely. Why do you fight? The human asked quietly. Rithon swallowed, his voice steady despite the fear. Because surrender means death. Because we must defend what is left. The human nodded slowly. I fought wars long before your fleets were born. I have seen empires rise and fall. Your kind doesn't understand us. And teach me, Rithon said, voice rough. A faint smile touched the human's lips. There is no teaching left. Only endings. Without another word, the human lunged forward. The battle was sudden and brutal. Rithon fired his blaster, but the human dodged with unnatural speed, closing the distance in moments. Claws met steel as they fought in the narrow corridor, every strike echoing like thunder. Rithon realized quickly that this was not a battle of strength, but of will. The human was relentless, every move precise, every attack calculated. It was as if centuries of survival were contained in a single deadly being. Finally, with a swift move, the human disarmed Rithon and pressed him against the cold metal wall. Their eyes locked. Your fight ends here, the human whispered. Rithon's breath was heavy, his body battered, but his spirit unbroken. Perhaps, he said quietly, but if I must fall, I will not do so without a fight. The human nodded once more, then disappeared back into the shadows. Rithon fell to his knees, exhausted but alive. Around him, the ship's alarm signaled the end. The last survivors of the alien fleet were either captured or gone in the darkness. A final transmission echoed across space. The human voice, calm and absolute, said, "This is not the end. It is only the beginning." The silence after the battle was heavy, thick with loss and the weight of what had been destroyed. Commander Rithon sat alone in a small holding cell deep inside the human vessel. His claws scraped quietly against the metal floor as he stared at the dim light above. The war was over, at least for now, but the future was uncertain. Through the narrow viewport, he saw the endless stars of space, distant and cold. The humans who had taken him captive moved silently outside his cell. Their faces were calm, but their eyes held stories deeper than any warship could tell. One of the humans approached. She was tall and strong, her armor clean but battle-worn. Her voice was steady but kind. "You're awake." Rithon nodded slowly. "I am, but I wonder what comes next." She smiled faintly. "The galaxy changes, old powers fall, new ones rise. Humans are no longer the hunted. We are the hunters." Rithon studied her carefully. "Why spare me?" "'Cause you fought with honor," she said. "And because understanding comes from survival." The human turned and left, the heavy door sliding shut with a soft hiss. Alone again, Rithon let his mind wander back to the battle, the destruction, fear, the final moments when he faced the human survivor. He had thought humans were myths, stories told to scare young soldiers. But now he knew the truth. Humans were not just warriors. They were legends made real. Days passed. Human ship moved steadily through space, carrying its prisoner and survivors of the destroyed fleet. Rithon was given food, water, and silence. No torture, no threats, only observation. One day, the same human woman returned. She brought a small device and placed it on the floor near Rithon's cell. "Watch," she said, stepping back. The device projected a hologram, a history of humanity's rise. Battles, sacrifices, lost worlds, and victories flashed before his eyes. The story of a species that had survived impossible odds, that had burned brighter with every attack. Rithon listened, fascinated despite himself. He saw the cruelty humans had faced, the wars that had shaped them, the price they had paid to survive. When the hologram ended, the woman spoke again. We do not seek to conquer blindly, we seek balance. To protect what we have won, Rython's voice was soft. And what of those like me? Those who fought you? You have a choice, she said simply. Join us, or be left behind in history's shadow. Rython thought of his homeworld, the empire that once was proud and strong, but now lay broken. He thought of his fallen comrades and the future that awaited him death or exile. Show me this new world, he said finally. If I am to survive, I must understand. The next days were a revelation. Adavan was brought to the human ship's command center. He saw the crew at work, diverse, determined, and united. Humans and other species who had joined them, all working toward a common goal: peace through strength. Rython spoke with the ship's captain, a wise and fierce woman named Captain Mara. You fought well, Mara said.
But this war is only
the start. There are threats beyond the stars, dangers that only unity can face. Rython nodded slowly. Then I will fight with you, not as your enemy, but as your ally. Mara smiled. Good, because the galaxy is vast, and the future will be shaped by those brave enough to change. As weeks passed, Rython learned much. Humans were not just warriors, they were builders, thinkers, survivors. They had faced extinction and risen stronger. The stories of old were true, but there was also hope, a chance to rebuild and protect the peace they had fought so hard to win. One evening, standing on the observation deck, Rython watched the stars. The cold void no longer felt empty. It held promise. Captain Mara joined him quietly. New dawn, Commander? She asked. Rython smiled softly. Yes, a new dawn. The stars stretched endlessly outside the human vessel's observation deck. Commander Rython stood silently, his claws resting against the cold glass. Weeks had passed since the battle that shattered his fleet and his pride. The fear that once consumed him had dulled into something new, a cautious respect, and perhaps a strange hope. Behind him, heavy footsteps echoed. Captain Mara approached, her presence calm yet commanding. You've been quiet, she said, standing beside him. Rython's eyes remained on the stars. Quiet is safer among hunters, he replied softly. Mara gave a small smirk. We're not hunters anymore, at least not unless someone forces us to be. Rython turned to her, his gaze questioning. And yet, the galaxy still fears you. Even now, the name human spreads panic. Mara's expression grew serious. Fear keeps enemies from making the same mistake twice. But fear alone won't build a future. We need allies, ones willing to stand with us when the darkness comes. Rython tilted his head. The darkness? Mara didn't answer immediately. She tapped a button on the wall, and a holographic map of the galaxy appeared. Far beyond known space, a region glowed red, marked with countless danger signals. This is the rim, Mara said quietly. Frontier where even we hesitate to go. There are whispers of an enemy older than war itself. Something even humans may not survive. Rython studied the map. And you think my people could help you? I think you've seen the truth, Mara said, meeting his eyes. You know what happens when empires build on arrogance and cruelty? You've lived it. We need those who understand what's coming. Later, in the ship's war room, Rython sat with Mara and her officers. They were planning a mission one that could change everything. A small human scout fleet had gone missing in the rim. No distress calls, no wreckage, just silence. Mara wanted to send a retrieval team. Rython frowned as the details unfolded. You think this darkness is responsible? Mara nodded slowly. If it is, we need to know, before it reaches the core worlds. Zerk, the only other surviving alien officer from Rython's fleet, shifted uncomfortably. Commander, this isn't our fight anymore. We should rebuild our people, not chase human ghosts into the void. Rython's eyes narrowed. It is our fight. If what's out there destroyed humans, it won't stop with them. My empire may be broken, but I won't see another nightmare rise unchecked. Mara studied Rython for a long moment, then gave a small nod of approval. Good, you'll lead the negotiation when we reach the Shirai sector. If we're going to form an alliance, we'll need more than human words to convince the Rim survivors to help.
Wow.
The journey was tense. The human ship passed through abandoned systems, drifting husks of stations long dead and planets scarred by battles unknown. It was unlike anything Rithon had seen. Even his empire's conquests hadn't left such eerie silence. One night, as the ship glided through darkness, Rithon found Mara on the deck again. She stared into space, her face unreadable. "You've seen many wars," Rithon said carefully. "But this feels different, doesn't it?" Mara's voice was low. "War is simple. You know your enemy, you fight, you win or die. This," she gestured toward the starless void ahead. "This feels like waiting for a predator you can't see." Rithon understood all too well. It reminded him of the terror his own fleet had felt when humans hunted them one by one. Except now, the fear wasn't from humanity. It was from something worse. 3 days later, they reached the HFY sector, a lawless region filled with wandering fleets and scavenger tribes. Mara's ship approached a massive rusting station. Surrounded by old warships patched together from scraps, the HFY were survivors, fighters who'd escaped something terrible in the rim. The meeting was tense. The HFY leader, a scarred alien named Vale, eyed Rithon with distrust. "I know you're kind," Vale said, voice rough like broken metal. "Conquerors, why should we trust you?" Rithon met his gaze steadily. "Because I know what it's like to lose everything. Because the darkness that chased you from the rim doesn't care about our past wars. It will take us all." Vale laughed bitterly. "Humans say the same thing. They talk about unity, yet leave ruins wherever they go." Mara leaned forward, her voice sharp. "We leave ruins for those who try to enslave or destroy others. This is different. This thing out there doesn't make demands. It just consumes." The room grew quiet. Rithon stepped closer to Vale, his voice low but firm. "We either face it together, or there will be nothing left to fight over." Vale stared at him for a long moment, then finally spoke. "I've seen the dark ships," he admitted softly. "They came from beyond the rim. They don't fire. They don't speak. They just erase everything." "And you know why we can't stand alone?" Mara said. Vale nodded reluctantly. "Fine, I'll join your alliance. But if humans betray us, you let the threat hang in the air." Mara didn't flinch. "If we betray you, you won't need to kill us. The darkness will do it first." Later, back on the human ship, Rithon stood by himself, watching the stars again. This time, he didn't see only fear. He saw a fragile chance for something more, a unity forged not by power, but by survival. Zerk joined him quietly. "Do you really trust them? The humans?" Rithon took a deep breath. "No," he admitted, "but I trust what I've seen. They fight harder than anyone, not for glory, but because they know what it means to lose everything. And if this darkness is real, we'll need fighters like that." Zerk nodded slowly, though unease lingered in his eyes. "Then we stand with them. Until the end." Rithon's gaze shifted toward the unexplored void ahead, where stars gave way to darkness. Somewhere out there, an ancient enemy waited. And this time, even the galaxy's most feared warriors, the humans, didn't know if they could win. The Allied fleet drifted at the edge of the galaxy, where stars faded into a black ocean of nothingness. Beyond this line, no map existed, no records, no returning travelers. The rim was silent, as though the universe itself feared what lay past. Commander Rithon stood on the bridge of Mara's flagship, his gaze fixed on the vast darkness ahead. Every instinct screamed at him to turn back, but something deeper, strange. Unfamiliar loyalty to this fragile alliance kept him rooted. Captain Mara's voice broke the tense silence. "Scanners detect debris ahead," she said, her tone sharp but calm. "Looks like what's left of the scout fleet." The main screen lit up with an image of shattered ships, floating like bones picked clean. No scorch marks, signs of weapons fire. Just emptiness, as if life itself had been pulled out of the metal. Zerk muttered softly beside Rithon. "This isn't war wreckage. This is feeding grounds." No? No one corrected him. They approached slowly, weapons armed but silent. The only sound on the bridge was the faint hum of the ship's engines, and the soft beeping of scanners trying to make sense of the void. Suddenly, Creel's console flickered. Her eyes widened, picking up energy signatures. Thousands of them, but no ships on visual. How is that possible? Rethon demanded. Mara's jaw tightened, cloaked, or worse. Helm, full evasive pattern. Keep us ready to jump. Before the order was carried out, the lights dimmed across the fleet. One by one, every ship's systems flickered. Communications died. The void outside seemed to grow heavier, darker, as though something enormous shifted in the abyss beyond their view. A deep, low sound rolled through the comes-not words. Not static, but something primal, like a predator's growl echoing across. Light years. Every crew member froze, instinct screaming, "Run." Then, without warning, the darkness moved. Shapes emerged, vast. Living shadows the size of dreadnoughts, their forms constantly shifting like smoke and water. No engines, no heat signatures, no weapons visible. Yet every instinct in Rithon screamed that they were far more dangerous than anything the galaxy had ever known. The first Allied cruiser vanished in an instant, not destroyed, erased. One moment it was there, the next it was gone, leaving only empty space. Open fire. Mara ordered, her voice steady despite the terror on her face. The Allied fleet unleashed everything it had. Beams of plasma, railgun slugs, torpedoes all tore into the void. For a heartbeat, the shadows shimmered as though the attacks landed. Then the weapon's fire vanished, swallowed whole, leaving the predators untouched. Zerk's voice cracked. Nothing hurts them. Nothing. Creel screamed from her console. They're inside our systems. Our shields are failing. No, they're dissolving. A horrifying thought struck Rithon. These things don't fight. They consume shit, energy. Life it doesn't matter. They feed on it all. As if answering his words, a new shadow passed directly through an Allied battleship. The ship didn't explode, it simply melted in two. The darkness, its light snuffing out like a candle in a storm. The bridge shook violently as something brushed past their own hull. The metal groaned as if under crushing pressure. Lights dimmed to emergency red. Hyperspace jump now. Mara shouted. The helmsman's hands flew over the controls. Can't lock coordinates. The darkness is jamming every exit vector. Rythan's claws dug into the console, his old soldier's instincts taking over. If we can't flee, we fight to live another minute. Target the center mass of the closest entity, Mara barked. All ships, focus fire. For a moment, the fleet coordinated streams of energy lighting up the void. One shadow creature recoiled slightly, its form twisting unnaturally as though annoyed. It didn't die, but it stopped advancing. Rython's eyes widened. We can't kill them, but we can push them back. Keep firing. Don't stop. The Alliance fought desperately, each second stretching into eternity. For every creature pushed away, another slipped closer, feeding on stray energy, on fear. Itself, ships vanished one after another, screams cutting through the coms before silence claimed them. Commander Zerk said urgently, gripping his arm. We can't hold this line, not forever. Rythan's mind raced. He remembered the humans' terrifying legend, their desperation-driven victories. They never fought to win, they fought to survive, no matter the cost. He turned to Mara. What? If we overload the engines, force a chain reaction across the fleet, it could burn everything in this sector, including them. Mara stared at him for a long, tense moment. Then grimly she nodded. It's suicide. It's survival, Rithon said. For the galaxy. If we don't stop them here, nothing will. The order went out. One by one, the remaining ships primed their engines for self-destruction, a wall of fire to keep the darkness at bay. Shadow creatures seemed to sense the shift. Their movements grew frantic, swirling around the fleet like vultures before a storm. The low, guttural growl returned, louder this time, vibrating through every hull, every bone. Ready? Mara asked quietly. Rithon met her eyes. For the first time, yes, the fleet roared as every reactor overloaded. A brilliant wave of light erupted, searing through the black void, a desperate flare against an enemy that had no face. Shadows screamed a sound not made by mouths, but felt in the soul. The darkness pulled back, writhing in pain, as reality itself seemed to burn. Then, everything went white. Rhython opened his eyes to silence. He floated in a rescue pod, stars around him. The human flagship drifting nearby, damaged, barely alive but surviving. Most of the fleet was gone, sacrificed in fire. The shadow creatures were nowhere to be seen. Mara's voice came softly through the cum. We bought time, but they're not dead, just sleeping. Rhython stared into the abyss where the darkness had been, his claws trembling slightly. Then the galaxy doesn't know war, he whispered. Not yet. Mara's voice hardened. And when they return, humans won't fight alone. Rhython met her gaze through the pod's viewport. For the first time in his life, he wasn't an enemy, a commander, or a conqueror. It was something far rarer, a survivor willing to fight. For more than himself, the galaxy had a new dawn. But in the distance, the real darkness waited, hungry and eternal. And now, for the first time in history, it would face a united front of war, where humans and their new allies would fight not for victory, but for the survival of all.